The echo of unsaid words hangs heavy between us, a silent witness to the love that trembled on the brink of collapse. In one careless moment, I became both the warrior and the vanquished, facing the enemy I had created within the walls of our home. Could the intimacy we once cherished be awakened from such profound neglect? The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our suburban neighborhood, where I lived with my wife, Sarah, in a quaint two-story house that had seen better days. The faded blue siding was peeling, and the once vibrant garden was a patchwork of wilting daisies and stubborn weeds. Yet, to me, it was a tapestry woven from the intricate moments we had shared, too many to count. Each corner of our home echoed laughter from our sunlit breakfasts and whispered secrets exchanged on quiet evenings. However, the echoes had grown faint, replaced by a thick silence that seemed to hang in the air, a constant reminder of the widening chasm between us. Walking through the house felt like tiptoeing through a museum of our past. Every photograph on the walls a testament to a love that was once fervent and alive. The living room, once a sanctuary of warmth and conversation, now felt suffocating, filled instead with an unshakable tension. I sank into the worn couch, feeling the imprint of our last shared moment etched into the fabric. The rhythmic ticking of the wall clock was an incessant reminder of time passing, of the moments I had wasted, all leading to the day when everything unraveled. In the weeks leading up to that day, I'd caught glimpses of the resentment brewing in Sarah's blue eyes, sometimes igniting like a spark that caught fire, other times flickering just beneath the surface. She was a passionate woman, fiercely independent, whose spirit I had once adored, but now felt so distant. I longed to reach for her, but every time I tried, the weight of unspoken words and unacknowledged pain pushed me back. Her laughter had been replaced with silence, her touching caresses with ice-cold distance, the very warmth of our home now feeling like a frigid shell. And then there I was, in the late hours of one fateful night, pouring my heart out to my friend Dave over beers, the warmth of alcohol loosening the restraints of my tongue. "She doesn't even see it," I'd vented, frustration bleeding into each word. "It's like we're strangers living in the same house." Little did I know, my careless words would travel through the walls, carrying echoes of my unguarded thoughts straight to her ears. I can still hear the echo of her breath hitching, the stony silence that followed my blurted grievances. Those few minutes shattered the fragile peace that remained. Sarah, standing just out of sight, seemed to crumble under the weight of my betrayal. She packed a bag and left that night, silence raging in her absence, the unresolved tension feeling like a living entity, suffocating and full of unresolved resentments. I was left alone with memories of tender moments that suddenly felt tainted, and I had become the giant I dreaded facing, overcome by my own ill-considered words and the hurt I had caused to the woman I loved. The days turned into a blur of regret and desperation. I'd replay every moment in my mind, desperately searching for the missteps that led us here. I began to feel the sharpened edges of loneliness punctuate my days, each moment stretching interminably. In the solitude of my thoughts, I recognized a daunting truth. I could no longer hide from myself. I had to confront my own shortcomings, the negligence that had planted the seeds of discord between us. As I wandered through the neighborhood, I could see families picnicking at the park and couples walking hand in hand, their laughter a stark contrast to the bittersweet memories of the life Sarah and I once knew. I stifled the ache in my chest, but the vibrant world around me only emphasized my isolation. There were moments I found solace in mundane chores, cleaning the empty house, vacuuming the carpet that now felt more like a graveyard of lost hopes. In that silence, I could almost hear whispers of Sarah's laughter, echoing in the halls, mingling with my guilt, demanding for atonement. And in the midst of this turmoil, glimmers of hope began to creep in, making me wonder if I would be brave enough to fight this battle. It may be uncomfortable, but perhaps what lay ahead could lead me back to the warmth of her embrace. But as I lay in bed at night, I often wondered if the vulnerabilities I was starting to recognize would be enough to bridge the widening chasm, or if I would simply become a footnote in her memory, a fleeting moment lost to time. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden hues across the suburban neighborhood, illuminating the quiet elegance of our home. Its once vibrant walls had seen joy and laughter, but they now bore the weight of unspoken resentments. Each creak of the floorboards echoed stories, memories that played like old videotapes. I could almost hear Sarah's laughter blending with the distant shouts of children playing in the park just beyond our yard. Yet, underneath that veneer of picturesque domesticity lay a brewing storm, a tension wrapped tightly around every thread of our lives. I often sat on the worn-out porch swing that creaked gently as the evening breeze coaxed it back and forth, reminiscing about the days when the air buzzed with laughter, affection, and promises sweet as honey. But now those memories felt like faded photographs, tucked away in an album I seldom dared to open. My heart ached as I reflected on how Sarah had grown more distant, her vibrant spirit slowly dulled by the layers of neglect we both contributed to. That particular evening, a quiet desperation bubbled beneath my skin. I had escaped into the sanctuary of my thoughts, a familiar retreat when I felt overwhelmed by the reality of our circumstances. My friend Mark had popped over, sensing my fidgeting energy, ready to lend an ear and crack a few jokes. He was good at that. We talked about everything, from his work woes to the latest political turmoil. But my mind returned repeatedly to Sarah's haunting silence. "Well, Jake," Mark finally nudged, leaning against the worn couch as he cracked an easy smile. "Why don't you just talk to her?" "Talk? About what?" I snapped, the frustration creeping into my voice. "About how she's grown cold. How everything I do feels like it's not enough. How I feel like I'm fighting against a wall." His playful demeanor shifted slightly and he leaned closer, sensing the heavy air. "She's your wife, man. Love's not supposed to feel like a battle. You need to be honest." It was then that I let the floodgates open, venting my frustrations as I absent-mindedly swirled the drink in my hand. My words slipped out carelessly, describing Sarah's changes in a way that felt more vindictive than honest. I didn't realize just how sharp the edges of my thoughts were. They cut through the air with an unsettling precision. I spoke of the way she had turned away from me, how I could have anything planned for dinner or weekend trips, and she'd humor me at best. Each syllable dripped with underlying resentment I hadn't intended to unleash. It wasn't until a sudden noise interrupted me that I felt the chill crawl down my spine, a soft gasp behind me. My stomach knotted as I turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, her eyes widening in disbelief and hurt. Time stood still. The words hung between us, a potent mix of regret and betrayal. "Really, Jake? You think this is funny?" she said, her voice trembling, the quiver carrying 1,000 unspoken frustrations. I stammered, stepping back, fumbling for a defense, but the words stuck like glue in my throat. My heart raced, realizing the magnitude of what I had done. The weight of my careless venting echoed painfully, amplifying the dishes that lay forgotten in the sink, the laundry that piled up, a testament to how rapidly we were drifting apart. In that moment, I saw the flicker of resentment in her eyes, an unmistakable wave of emotion crashing over both of us. Her shoulders tightened, defenses rising like an impenetrable wall, a shield against the pain I had inflicted. "You don't even appreciate me, do you?" Sarah's voice was strained, thick with unshed tears as she turned on her heel, effectively storming out of the room. I watched helplessly as the door slammed shut behind her, the noise echoing like a gunshot, a brutal reminder of the fracture that had just rent our lives apart. My heart raced, not from anger, but from a disorienting sense of loss. It was a moment that felt utterly catastrophic, marking the start of an uncharted territory between us. In that instant, I realized something crucial. The fight ahead would not be against us, but against the insidious, silent forces of neglect and resentment that had seeped into our lives, lurking in the corners of our home. Faced with the stark reality of how my own carelessness had lacerated our bond, I understood that the hardest part of this battle would be confronting what I had become and the depth of the love I risked losing. As the days spread into what felt like an interminable abyss, the hollow silence in our home became more oppressive, suffocating in its weight. I could hear the echo of my own apology in my mind, caught somewhere between desperation and regret, but the emptiness reverberated back, offering me no solace. Sarah's absence was like a gaping wound, raw and unhealed, throbbing with the pain of my careless words. I was supposed to be the man she could depend on, the anchor of our marriage, yet I had armed her with my dissatisfaction as a weapon, and now I found myself facing the wreckage alone. The sun rose and set, each day a cruel reminder that my choices had consequences, an endless cycle of regret that left me staring into the mirror, searching for a semblance of the man I once was. Fighting against the knot in my stomach, I tried to recall our laughter, the light that used to dance in Sarah's eyes, and the warmth of her touch, memories that now felt like distant stars, dimmed by the encroaching shadows of our discord. I scrolled through photos on my phone, each snapshot a painful reminder of the life we once had. It tore at me. How could I let it slide away? I thought. I resolved to reach out, to try and bridge this chasm that had rapidly formed between us. One evening, after what felt like an eternity of wrestling my thoughts to the ground, I found the courage to invite her to the coffee shop we once adored, the place where we shared whispered secrets under the dim, soothing lights. I watched the streets as I waited, heart pounding, gauging every passerby through a thrumming lens of hope and fear. The minutes dragged lethargically, the reflection of my face in the glass more haunted with each tick of the clock. When she arrived, it felt like standing at the edge of a treacherous cliff, teetering over an abyss of vulnerability. "Can we talk?" I asked, deliberately keeping my tone soft, inviting. Sarah's face was strained, her lips pressed together in a thin line that betrayed how hard she fought against whatever emotions churned within her. She nodded, but the sadness in her eyes cut deeper than I could fathom. "Jake," she began, voice tight, "what do you want me to say? You made it clear how you feel about us." Just as the words slipped from her tongue, her gaze flicked down to the small table separating us. It was as if that simple space had morphed into an insurmountable wall. "I want to start by saying I'm sorry," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't have vented like that, especially not to a friend. It was selfish." I leaned in, the intent to bridge that distance palpable. "The truth is, I've been struggling. I've let life's monotony drown me, letting go of what really matters. Us. But you seem so content to be fed up," she shot back, the frustration bubbling under the surface. "Every day I wait for something to change, but all I see are the same resentments, the same walls." Her voice cracked, and I could sense the veil of anger thin, revealing a deeper hurt swimming just beneath her composure. "I know," I replied, searching for the words that could touch her heart. "But I don't want to let us slip away. I want to fight for what we have, what we had." The reality hung heavily in the air between us, unacknowledged yet felt. I could feel all the warmth dissipating as I spoke. The bitter aftertaste of silence enveloped us, but I noticed her eyes glisten. They betrayed her own battle against the fury of unexpressed emotions. "You know, it wasn't just your words that hurt me. It was believing that you'd always be my rock. And I thought you didn't see me anymore." I was struck by the weight of her confession, the admission of her weariness of feeling unseen, lost within the layers of day-to-day existence. It was devastating yet enlightening, illuminating what went wrong. That changing, evolving desire was lost in our routine. I reached out, instinctively brushing my fingers against hers, desperately hoping to draw her closer. I could feel the pull, a magnetic connection that screamed to be recognized. Swallowing hard, I whispered, "I've lost sight of everything, Sarah. I'm terrified of losing you forever." My fingers took on a life of their own, interlacing with hers, capturing a moment of intimacy that was electric, laden with possibility. The flicker in her eyes suggested a spark, but it was encased in the ice of lingering doubt. "I need more than just your words, Jake. I need to see you trying," she replied, voice steady but filled with an undercurrent that hinted at her own yearning. "Words are just words. They won't rebuild the pieces you've shattered." "I understand," I replied, my heart racing faster than I could process. "Let me show you." There was an urgency in me, a desire to forge the foundation back together, brick by brick, word by word. And this moment, however small, felt like a start. And as I leaned closer, brushing my lips against hers, the world faded away. It was tentative at first, a brush of warmth that sent sparks flickering through my veins. But the kiss deepened, fueled by everything unsaid, every moment we had lost, threaded with the sparkling threads of the love that still flickered in the ashes. Each caress held a promise, each sigh an apology, and I could feel the distance between us begin to wane with every pulsing heartbeat that spoke louder than our fears ever could. The weight of silence settled heavily between us, stretching days into weeks. Each one felt like a reminder of our estrangement, a constant sting that echoed through our once vibrant home. I would wake up in the thick of night, staring at the empty space beside me, envisioning her there, and my heart would crack just a little bit more. The walls that had witnessed our laughter now felt like a prison, confining our unspoken resentments. I found myself trapped in a loop of regret and longing, trying to remember the last time Sarah had smiled genuinely at me. I missed her warmth, the way she curled against me on the couch, her laughter ringing like a sweet melody. But now her laughter was a haunting ghost, a reminder of the distance I had created. My careless words had driven that wedge between us deeper than I had thought possible. I ached for her, but every attempt I made to bridge the gap was met with an ice-cold reception. One evening as I sat in my favorite chair, the sunlight bathing the room in a gentle glow, I found myself lost in thought. I thought of how I could win back her affection. My coffee sat untouched, the steam curling softly into the air like the fading memories of our connection. Should I bring up that old fishing trip to the lake, the one where we spent all day laughing and teasing each other? Or maybe reminisce about our first date, how I nervously stuttered my words, but she just giggled and held my hand. I craved for her to look at me with that spark from our early days. Then it happened, the blow that shattered whatever resolve I thought I had built. A mutual friend, Mark, casually mentioned he'd seen Sarah out. "She seemed happy, Jake. Had this guy with her." His words were blunt, a knife that twisted painfully in my heart. I felt my stomach drop and something inside me cracked further. My own insecurities reared their ugly heads. Had I truly lost her to someone who could make her smile again? Jealousy twisted my insides, leaving a bitter aftertaste. I felt desperate, a scrappy fighter in a ring filled with giants. My own negligence, her growing resentment, and now another man. I was spiraling into a chasm of fear and regret, and I knew I had to act. As I prepared to confront her, I felt a wave of adrenaline surge through my veins. I had to at least try. That evening, I gathered my courage and sent her a text, suggesting we meet at the little cafe we used to frequent. When I walked in, the familiar smell of coffee and the comforting hum of chatter hit me, but they offered no solace. My heart raced as I spotted Sarah sitting there, her eyes averted, fingers nervously tapping on her phone. "Hey," I said softly as I slid into the seat across from her. The distance felt monumental. She looked up, surprise flashing across her face, but quickly replaced by that wall I had grown accustomed to. "Jake," she greeted, a hint of weariness in her voice. I heard you've been out a bit. The words stammered out before I could stop them, an anxious admission. I watched for a flicker of emotion on her face. Her eyes hardened. Don't what? I'm just trying to understand, Sarah. You left. I need to know. Is there someone else? I leaned forward, desperate, willing her to meet my gaze. Please, I can't bear this silence anymore. For a long moment, she simply stared at me, the tension palpable. It felt like she had something to say but was biting her tongue. Maybe I have, she finally said, each word feeling like shards of glass. But I deserve to be happy, Jake. You've made that impossible. Her honesty hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt hot anger surge within me, a primal urge to fight back. You think dating someone else will fix all the hurt? It just proves you don't want to work on us. My voice was sharper than I intended, and I saw how it cut her. I'm tired, Jake. Tired of fighting for something that feels so far gone. The vulnerability in her voice tugged at an old wound deep within my chest. I wanted to reach over the table to grab her hands and hold them, to remind her of the late nights spent talking about our dreams, of a time when our love felt unbreakable. Instead, I could only sit there like a wounded animal swallowing my pride. Then let's figure this out. Together, I whispered, my heart pounding in the silence that followed. I can change. I want to change. Can you? She challenged, her brows furrowed with skepticism. Can you really just flip a switch? Can you erase how you made me feel? I don't want to erase it. I want to redeem it, I confessed, my voice thick with emotion. A heavy silence filled the space between us, a silent cry for understanding that neither of us seemed ready to breach. Slowly, she reached out as if testing the waters. Our fingers brushed, soft and electric, igniting memories of tender caresses and stolen kisses. But in that moment, her phone buzzed on the table. She recoiled, her expression shifting from tentative hope to determination. I have to take this. It's... She hesitated, glancing at the screen. It's him. I watched helplessly as she stood to answer, each step pulling her further away. My heart thundered in my chest. The battle was still underway, and the stakes had never felt higher. As Sarah walked away, I could feel the weight of impending decisions pressing heavily upon me. My own fears of losing her pulled me back, urging me to act. But instead, I sat there, lost in chaos, haunted by the knowledge that our fates were still intertwined in ways neither of us could fully understand. And as she stood with her back turned to me, I was left teetering on the edge of revelation, aching to know. Would she return to fight for us or slip away completely, holding my heart hostage between love and loss in a game I was not sure I could continue to play? The sun hung low over the lake, casting golden streaks across the surface that mirrored the chaos stirring within me. I could feel my heart racing as I stood on the shore, anxiety pooling in my stomach. How had it come to this? The girl who once set my heart aflame had become an elusive figure, shadowed by our misunderstandings and my careless words. Jake? Sarah's voice broke the silence, a mere whisper yet sharp enough to slice through the tension in the air. She stood a few feet away, hesitant, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. The vibrant sunset painted her in hues of orange and pink, making her look both ethereal and untouchable. It was a sight that ignited my longing, yet filled me with dread. Thank you for coming, I managed to say, my voice cracking as I stepped closer, the memories flooding back. Here at this lake, we'd once shared laughter, dreams, and the intoxicating thrill of new love. Now, those precious moments seemed like fragile ghosts, haunting us from the depths of our shared history. I didn't have a choice, she shot back, her expression hardening. You wanted to talk. But what's there to say, Jake? You've voiced your feelings enough already. Each word dripped with ice, shattering the fragile hope I clung to. No, Sarah, I urged, stepping even closer to her. That's just it. I don't think I've ever really voiced what matters. Not until now. I felt exposed under the weight of her gaze, the vulnerability of my own fears unveiled between us like a thick fog. I messed up, You heard me vent, but I didn't say what I truly feel about you. I've been an idiot, assuming you'd always be there." At that, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a vulnerability perhaps, and I pressed on. "I took you for granted, and I let my frustrations spill over and overshadow what we've built, what you mean to me, what I love about you. You weren't just a punching bag for my frustrations. You're everything." My voice grew louder, filled with the raw fervor that had been dormant for too long. "And what about the things you don't love?" Her words were sharp, but I felt the heaviness in her chest. "The things I do that annoy you, the way you think I'm nagging or holding you back, those careless words you said, they still linger." Hearing her speak the truth rifled through my heart like 100 needles, sharp and relentless. I was wrong. I don't think those things about you. It was my conflict, my fears, my frustration with myself spilling over. I need you to know that I see you and I'm terrified of losing you. I reached out, risking the distance that had grown between us, letting my fingertips brush against her forearm. The electricity of that single touch coursed through me, igniting everything that had been neglected. The world around us faded, and I saw through the anger and hurt, the deeply rooted love that was still there, buried beneath our grievances. I paused, gathering every last ounce of courage. "I want to start afresh. Together." The weight of those words transformed the air, hanging thick and heavy, like the moments before a storm. "I can't promise that I won't screw up again, but I want to figure this out with you. All you have to do is trust me to try." The gasp that escaped her lips shattered the tension, the emotions rising in waves between us. I watched as uncertainty danced in her eyes, battling against years of hurt and disappointment. But how can I? Letting my guard down feels impossible after everything that's happened. "Let me prove it to you," I whispered earnestly, yearning for her to see how vulnerable I was in that moment. Suddenly, the cool touch of her skin warmed under my hand, as if fire ignited within us. Whatever was left unsaid was finally beginning to shift. "I still want you. I need you." For a heartbeat, everything held its breath. I leaned forward, the distance collapsing as I cradled her face in my hands. Our tension reached a fever pitch, and without a single word, I pressed my lips against hers, igniting the passion that had simmered beneath the surface. The kiss was soft yet desperate, laden with everything we had let slip away, everything we had once cherished. She melted against me, her arms wrapping around my waist, pulling me closer as though trying to gather all the fragments we had lost. My fingers tangled in her hair as our kiss deepened, turned more urgent, every brush of our lips reigniting something powerful between us. It was a sensual unraveling, a relearning of each other filled with the taste of forgiveness. "Jake," she breathed as we pulled away slightly, her usual fire replaced by a warmth that spread through the air. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet." "The journey begins here, Sarah," I said, my voice a soft promise. "I'll work to prove how deeply I care. It will take time, but I need you by my side." In that moment, I saw a flicker of hope blossom in her eyes, the first glimmer of belief amidst the storm. The battles we faced, the years of hurt and pain, felt like the beginning of an opportunity to rebuild. As we embraced under the setting sun, I realized that facing the giant had led us not just to confrontation, but also to this pivotal turning point, a chance to rekindle a love built on understanding, grace, and intimacy. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over our favorite lakeside, now a symbol of our renewed journey together. I stood hand in hand with Sarah, our fingers intertwined, feeling the weight of our shared past and the promise of what lay ahead. The air held a tension, not of unresolved conflict, but of reconciliation, of hope. "I can't believe we almost lost this," Sarah said softly, her voice a soothing balm against the cool evening breeze. Her eyes searched mine, reflecting both pain and the spark of rekindled affection. "I've taken a lot for granted," I admitted, the words catching in my throat like a stubborn lump. "But I've changed. I'm learning to see you, to listen not just with my ears but with my heart." A faint smile crossed her lips, the kind that seemed to thaw the winter, chilling the spaces between us. "And I've been too guarded, holding on to resentment instead of sharing my fears." She stepped closer, the familiar scent of her perfume enveloping me, a mix of jasmine and something indescribably hers. It reminded me of love, of laughter, and the moments of warmth that I had almost let slip away. Underneath the twilight sky, we took the time to explore the depths of our feelings. "Remember when we used to talk about our dreams?" she asked, her gaze drifting to the stars beginning to twinkle above us. "I want to connect in that way again, to feel the vulnerability you talked about." "Yes, but it starts with honesty," I replied, the memory of my careless words returning to haunt me. "I need to express my frustrations without letting them turn venomous. I want to build a love fortified with patience and understanding." As the night deepened, we shared laughter and reminisced about our early days, moments woven into the fabric of our shared experience. The innocence of those days now shadowed by the lessons learned, every trial we navigated brought us closer beneath the surface. In an instant, I leaned in, capturing her lips with mine. The kiss was not just a reconnecting of two bodies, but a melding of our spirits, the release of weeks filled with heartache and uncertainty. As our mouths danced together, I felt the warmth of her body against mine, every nuance of her touch igniting a long dormant spark. It was not merely a kiss, but a promise, a declaration that we would not let our prior mistakes haunt us. From that moment, it became clear that our journey would be continuous. We vowed to check in with one another, to really listen, to face our pain openly. The world might have felt like a battlefield, but we had learned the power of empathy, the grace in vulnerability, and the importance of nurturing love instead of letting it fade. As we left the lakeside, our fingers still intertwined, I knew we stood on the precipice of a new beginning. A beautiful, messy journey filled with continuous growth and unwavering support. We were ready to confront whatever life threw our way, together, committed to writing a new chapter in our story, one filled with love, resilience, and understanding. In that moment, everything felt right, and it was clear that even significant battles could lead to a profound connection, one we were now better equipped to cherish.